Hello, I'm Holly and welcome to another reading vlog. For the next week I'm going to be reading romance. I am quite a romance newbie. The extent of my romance is when it has been in other books. For example, Sarah J Maas. I have read the first two books in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. The second one, there was a couple of steamy scenes, but that is pretty much the extent of romance. I think I did read a few Christmas romances a few years ago, didn't love them and they haven't really stuck in my mind, but I feel like romance is really popular on BookTube. There are so many books that I see pop up again and again and I wanted to try them, and in 2 days time it is going to be Valentine's Day, so I thought what better time to try some romance than around Valentine's Day. This video will obviously be coming out a little bit after that, so I hope you had a nice day. Whether you're in a relationship or not, I am single and I'm gonna be reading romance. So I have quite a big TBR, but I'm hoping that because these are relatively short, they're contemporaries, they're romances, that they should be quite fast. I have 4 physical books here, and then I'm going to be listening to the audiobook of You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. And I'm not going to tell you the plots of these until I get to them, or it could become quite repetitive, but the 4 I have here, I have The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. This is a historical romance. The second one I have is Get a Life, Chloe Brown by Talia Hibbert. This is another one that is incredibly popular at the moment. I think the 3rd book in this series is coming out soon, or this year at some point, and yeah, I really wanted to try this one. Then we have 2 library books, so we have the Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang, and then finally we have The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I'm sure if you've been on BookTube that you will have heard of most of these books because they are quite popular. Maybe this one a little bit less so, but I feel like historical romance is probably the least read genre that I've seen. I don't know, people love fantasy romance, people love contemporary romance, but historical romance I think could actually be my niche in romance, but we're going to find out. I'm hoping that I have at least 1 or 2 4 or 5 star reads this week, but because I have so little experience in romance, I don't know if this is going to be very successful. I would love to know if you have read any of these and what your thoughts were on them. I have heard great things, so I'm hoping that I will end up loving them too. I might start listening to the audiobook actually, which is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. That is the only young adult book on this list. It sounds like it's going to be really, really cute, and I'll probably start listening to that one, but then if I'm going to pick a physical book, I really don't know. Maybe, I don't know, it's so difficult. Okay, I'm just gonna go with Get a Life, Chloe Brown. Those are my plans. I hope that you enjoy this vlog. Let me know if you love romance or if you have any romance recommendations, whether they're contemporary, fantasy, anything. I would love some more recommendations because I don't really know anything about romance. But yes, that's it, and I'm going to go and get some reading done. So it is now 2 o'clock on Saturday, and I thought that I would update you about my first read, which is Get a Life, Chloe Brown. So I was just going to update you when I get like halfway through the book and when I finish a book, but I just needed to talk to you now. I'm on page 138, which is chapter 9, and I love it. It is so good, and I know everyone says that it's so good, and I've definitely picked some of the most popular books on BookTube that are romance. So I knew it was gonna be good, but I just didn't know if, like, personally I was gonna love it as much as everyone else seemed to. But the basic premise of this is that you have a girl called Chloe Brown. She has this near-death experience. She is almost hit by a car, and that makes her reflect on her life, and she's like, I haven't achieved anything. So she's decided to make this list and, you know, put herself out there, do things that she's never done before, such as riding a motorcycle. And she moves into this set of flats, and the superintendent, Red, is this, I don't know what you'd call him. He's tattooed, he's an artist. And when they first meet, there is a bit of tension between these two individuals. So it's a bit like enemies to lovers. I know that is a very popular trope in romance. And I love the, like, banter between those two characters, and I also love the banter that Chloe has with her sisters. So she has two sisters, and I believe that this is a series. You can read them individually, but they follow like different sisters in this family, and I just love all those conversations. They're very witty and funny and passive aggressive, and I just really am enjoying this. And I just read chapter 8 where they are emailing back to each other because Chloe makes websites, he's an artist, and she's basically told him that she can help him make a website if he helps her with her list. And they're emailing back, and the little passive aggressive things, I was just laughing out loud. This book has made me laugh so much. It is an incredibly funny book, but it does also deal with some harder topics. So for example, our main character Chloe has chronic pain, and that is a major focus in this story, and I really love that that element is included. I don't think that's something that you see very much. And there was a little warning at the beginning that it dealt with recovery from an abusive relationship, and I think that's going to be more of Red's story, but we haven't really got too much into that. There's been a couple of hints about a toxic relationship in the past, but we haven't really got too many details about that, so I think that is something that is going to become more as we go through this book. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this. I'm loving the writing style. I love our two characters. I love their romance. It doesn't feel very rushed. It feels very natural the way that it's progressing, and I'm really enjoying it. Could this be like a 5-star read? I don't know. We're not even halfway yet, so it could go downhill, but I have high hopes. And yeah, I'm just like really into it. Hello, so it is now Sunday morning, and last night I finished Get a Life Chloe Brown, so I read all of this yesterday, and like I said earlier, I really enjoyed this book. It kept on being a really good book. I enjoyed the majority of it. I wasn't like a huge fan of the conflict that was right at the end, because that went a bit on like miscommunication, and I don't think that's a trope that I actually enjoy. And it kind of just felt like you'd got so far in the book and there hadn't been enough conflict, so the author decided to just put something in. But then I also feel like it was maybe more realistic, because both our characters they're going through their own things, and I just really, really enjoyed this. I gave it 4 stars. It was very close to a 5-star. It was just that like conflict at the end. I felt like it could have ended a tiny little bit earlier and I would have been like 5 stars. I would say that this one is probably quite high on the romance sex factor, because there were some explicit scenes, explicit language, and yeah, I can't recommend it highly enough. I'm so glad this was the first one that I read during this reading vlog. I'm definitely going to continue in this series, because I think there's 2 other books which are about Chloe's 2 sisters, and they did feature in this one, so I'm interested to see how like Chloe and Red are probably going to like have a cameo in the future books. I think that would be really cute. So yes, first book down, that was a success. And then the second book that I literally read 10 pages in, but I picked it up last night. There was like, maybe I had like half an hour before I was going to go to sleep, and I thought, oh, I'll read until I sleep. But the next book that I'm going to read is The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics by Olivia Waite. This follows, I haven't really got into the romantic plot to be honest, but at the beginning of this book you are introduced to Lucy, who is attending a wedding of her past lover, who has now married a man, and this is a female-female relationship. So I think Lucy is a lesbian lesbian. It's just two women in the 1800s. I'll tell you what exact year. 1816. And I'll just read you like a summary of the back. So you have Lucy, her ex-lover has just got married and she's very upset. And her father has recently died. He studies celestial mechanics, so you know, like astrology, astronomy. Not sure which one of those two, but maths in the sky, and she has helped him a lot in his career, but she's never been named on any of his papers. Obviously, this is a very male-dominated world. Now that he's died, her brother is saying, you need to go and get married, have a baby, forget all this science, you just need to go and be like a good woman for the society. And she's like, no. And then she gets this letter from Catherine St. Day, who is a famous scientist. Her and her husband were like a scientist duo and they were doing some like really good stuff, so they're very well known. And Catherine's husband has just died, and I think she's just like, I don't want to do it anymore, like the love is gone. So she sends a letter to Lucy saying that she'd heard that Lucy's father had died and that she wants someone to translate this like masterwork, and could she recommend anyone, like did her father have any students, was he mentoring anyone? And obviously Lucy knows that she was helping her father, she has the capability, so I believe that she goes to Catherine's house and then things happen. I think I'm really gonna love this. I loved Gentleman Jack, which was a period drama, and that was like two women falling in love, and I really enjoyed that. I love historical fiction. I definitely need to read more of that. And considering I loved Chloe Brown, obviously I do love a romance. And yes, not much I can say about that considering I'm only 10 pages in. I'm hoping to read the entire of this today. But yes, those are my updates. I might check in with you a little bit later, or I might just like read all day and then check in with you tomorrow. So it is now Monday, and last night I finished the Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics. I finished this quite late, so I thought that I would update you this morning, but I really enjoyed this one as well. I haven't put it through core pile yet, but I'm thinking it's going to come out at a 4-star, maybe another high 4, like Get a Life Chloe Brown, because I just like adored this book. And there's a lot more to that story because there's a lot about how society views women in science. Obviously they're very excluded, and it's about the characters trying to, I don't know, get their voices heard. And one of the characters, the Countess, something that I absolutely adored is that she is really into embroidery, which is quite a feminine pursuit. I think that's the name of this series. In terms of how it was viewed at the time, that was just seen as like a woman's thing, completely frivolous and not really art. But actually it's saying this is art, this takes a lot of time. I like that the women could be both this scientifically minded, very strong, forward person, as well as someone who just loves to do embroidery. And I think the thing, again, that I loved with this book is that the romance was pretty good. There was a few sexy scenes, not to the extent of Get a Life Chloe Brown. That one is definitely higher on like the heat factor. I would say this is maybe like a 3 out of 5. There is some explicit scenes, but the kind of language that is used is not as blunt as Get a Life Chloe Brown. So there are a few scenes, but I think what this book is really about is the story, like the plot apart from the romance. The romance was great, love the romance. I probably would have liked it to take a little bit longer because I love the yearning, I love like a slow burn and the angst, and I felt like very quickly things started to happen. But I did love the plot. By the end, the romance for me was more the secondary plot. I wanted to know what was going on with this manuscript. I wanted to know what the character was going to do with her embroidery and writing books and finding other women scientists. So I actually loved the plot, and I have read another book similar to this which was called The Lie Tree by Frances Harding. That is actually a young adult novel, so that's not romantic at all, but it had that same story of a woman who loves science and science doesn't want her, and how she is like, actually I can do it just as well as you, and I just really like that. I think I might have found something in like a historical book that I actually really enjoy reading about. I'll definitely be picking up the second book. This is a series, but I believe that each of the books follows like different characters. I'm definitely going to be picking that up because I feel like Olivia Waite is doing some great things and I really enjoy this one, so I definitely want to read some of her other books. But yeah, 2 books down, 2 books at 4 stars, like 4.5 stars. We're going great. So the next book that I'm going to read is The Kiss Quotient by Helen Hoang, and what I know from this one is that there is this woman and she has Asperger's and she hasn't had any romantic experience or sex experience, so she ends up hiring this escort to teach her about certain things. But yeah, I'm very happy with all the books that I've read so far. I absolutely love them, and just like the couple, the plot. I mean, I wasn't expecting these romances to have like an additional plot that you're also really interested in. I thought it was going to be very romantically driven, but this one, like the secondary plot was so good and I really, really enjoyed it. And I would definitely recommend if you like historical romance. Okay, so it is now Tuesday morning, and last night I got about halfway through the Kiss Quotient and I'm not enjoying this one as much as the other ones. And I think the reason, like, I have a couple of reasons, but the first one is that the love interest, Michael, is just like not my type. He does like a lot of exercise, like he's really like, you know, abs, muscles, and he's had like a bit of like, he's been like a party boy, and I'm just like, that's not my type. So I'm not like loving the romance. And then I don't know if I've talked about this before, I might have briefly mentioned, but I have Asperger's, which is what Stella, the main character, has. And of course everyone's experiences are different, but I thought I might comment a bit on that. I think it's okay. There's just like a couple of lines that feel a bit like self-loathy, like she hates herself, and I don't love that. Obviously, she's just one person, she's not representative of every single person, but it was almost stuff like that she didn't want to be defined by her autism, or that she was worried that if he knew that she had autism, that he would see her as less. And maybe there are people out there who have those opinions, but the author herself has autism. So it's a bit like, do you need to put that in? And also, I don't want to say it is going this way, but there have been some bits where it's like, love can fix you, because she's in situations that cause her a lot of anxiety, but like she's done it because she wants to be with Michael, and like when she's with Michael she feels so safe and she doesn't feel as anxious. And I mean, that probably is true, that if you are with someone that you feel safe, that you can, like, I don't know, not necessarily get rid of your anxiety, but work with it. But it almost feels a bit like, I hope that at the end she is still like she is at the beginning, in that he hasn't just suddenly miraculously like cured her, because I feel like there are a couple of lines that I'm like, I don't like that. And I'm sure that's not the author's intention, but I think because I'm paying so close attention to the representation, that maybe I'm just noticing a couple of like things that I personally don't like. That doesn't mean that I'm right. Everyone has different opinions. I will also say, if you have any sensory issues, which I do, like you can get overwhelmed, this book did like trigger me a little bit, just in the descriptions of her panicking in like really noisy and like crowded places, because I panic in noisy and crowded places, and that did feel very real. It's not bad. I mean, it's right now it's probably sitting at about a 3-star, so I'm still enjoying it. I'm hoping that the ending will pick up a bit. Okay, so let's talk about the Kiss Quotient. I finished this last night. I gave it 2 stars. First of all, I really didn't like Michael, who is our male love interest. He just felt very possessive and very alpha male, very domineering and not necessarily controlling or abusive or aggressive in any way like that. He just felt very much like, you're my Stella, no one else can have you, you're mine, and you're gonna do these things, and that's not my type of guy. I'm sure that a lot of people love that kind of male character, but personally I just really didn't like him. And I did feel that there were a few instances in this where Stella clearly was not comfortable doing something, but he was like, oh, give it a go, try it, I'm sure that you'll like it. And there were just like a couple of sentences that really like made me feel uncomfortable, and I just feel like it's a romance, you have to be rooting for the romantic relationship, and because I didn't like Michael at all really, I wasn't rooting for the relationship. The second reason I really disliked this book was to do with the way that the autistic rep was included. So first of all, I think that it is fantastic that there are books that are so popular that do have autistic representation in. I think that's incredibly important. There are probably going to be a number of people who read this book and really relate, maybe get a diagnosis or learn more about themselves, and I think that is incredibly important. But as someone with autism who has certain things that you think about yourself negatively, I think the way that Stella considered herself throughout the majority of this novel was actually quite harmful, and it was only really at the end where she's like, I don't need to change society, I am who I am, and being autistic doesn't make you a unworthy person, or I don't know really how to explain it, but she had a lot of negative thoughts about herself. Like, she felt like she wasn't worthy, she felt like she had to change for a man, for society. I didn't like how it was done. I think it just hit a bit too close to home, some of the bits that it was talking about, and I picked up this book to have a good time. I didn't expect it to be like coming at me and like exposing all these things that I have thought personally like that are really negative, and I didn't like it. I think for some people it's probably going to be fine, and obviously everyone's experiences are different. The author actually said that at the end in an author's note, and how actually the process of this book enabled her to figure out that she was autistic and to get a diagnosis, which is incredible. And there is a whole miscommunication plotline in this. If you really don't want to know too much, probably just wait till I put this book down. But at the end, they basically break up, and they both think that the other one doesn't love them or love them as much as they do. And Stella's reaction, I think, was really toxic and unhealthy. I don't want to use the term self-harm because that's obviously a very important and complex topic, but she really doesn't like certain textures of clothes, she doesn't like loud noises, she doesn't like certain scents, and they actually cause like a panic attack or anxiety. And because she broke up, she was like, I need to change, and she was like putting on perfume that made her like sick and wearing clothes that were like really irritating her, causing her anxiety. And while at the end she was like, actually I don't need to do this, that was just like really awful to read. She also goes to a club at one point to kind of impress him, and she does have like a panic attack. And there were just some scenes and some content in this that I personally really disliked and that was actually quite harmful to me. And I'm not saying that the representation is bad. I just think if, say, you are autistic, go into it knowing that for 99% of this book, it is not a fun time, and I went into this expecting it to just be like a light and fun read, and really for me, for most people it probably was light and fun, but for me it wasn't a fun reading experience. I wanted a light time, I wanted a fun time, I didn't get a fun time, I was just very stressed, didn't like the romance anyway, even if it didn't have all those other elements. I didn't like Michael as a character, and overall I gave it 2 stars. I did give it 2. It was like the writing was fine, the sex was pretty good, it was quite explicit. I would say that this is equivalent to Chloe Brown. There are a lot of explicit sex scenes. I did feel like they got a bit repetitive and boring though, but that's just like a personal taste thing. And yeah, I haven't really said too much positive about this book. I personally didn't enjoy it. And yeah, so that was my 3rd book. Not a great 3rd book, considering it was only 2 stars. And I probably wouldn't recommend it. But this one is done. I probably should have stopped halfway through, but I wanted to complete it for this vlog. And now I just need something to make me feel much better. So I do have my 2 books. I still haven't listened to any of You Should See Me in a Crown. I mean, I say I haven't listened to any of it. I've listened to about 2 minutes. But yeah, I really need to get on that. So I'm thinking that one might be my priority for today. And then the final book that I have is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. Now, I have heard mixed things about this one. I know that a lot of people love this one, but I have also heard that the male character is a bit of a dick. So I'm hoping that it's better than the Kiss Quotient. It better be better, because I was very, very disappointed in that one. So many people have been giving it like 4 and 5 stars, the Kiss Quotient. But those are my thoughts. I'm sorry that I've been a bit negative. And of course, if you love the Kiss Quotient, that's fine. It just didn't work for me. And because of like my personal experiences and my personal mental health, it just like, it got me too deep. And that isn't what I wanted. So it's been a few days and I have now finished You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnston. And my thoughts are a bit mixed. So I wanted to try a young adult contemporary romance in this, just to like break up all the adult books, and I wasn't sure if I actually liked young adult anymore, so I wanted to try it and I didn't love it. I ended up giving it 3 stars, so it definitely wasn't a bad book in my opinion. I think if you love young adult contemporary, you are definitely going to love this one. I feel like it had the same vibes as To All the Boys I've Loved Before, that very cute, fun, high school drama, stuff like that. And there were some bits that I really enjoyed. I really liked the sibling relationship between our main character Liz and her brother. He has sickle cell anemia, and that is like a storyline throughout this, how he's dealing with that, how their mother actually died from this, or complications to do with it. And I feel like it delved into some deeper topics. It delved into like being poor, what it means to be black and queer. Can you come out, or will people just like not want you to be prom queen? And I actually feel like the romance plotline was only like a small part of this book. It definitely had lots of romantic scenes, you know, like a first kiss, a first dance at prom, everything like that. So it definitely had those romance elements, but I think that this book offered a lot more than simply like a standard romance. There was a lot of Liz coming into her own, getting confidence in her abilities, wanting to actually stand up for what she believes, and I really did enjoy that. I think Liz was a very well created character. She had lots of dimensions, and I actually think the characters in this were really good. They didn't feel flat at all. They felt like they had lots of different characteristics and layers to their personality. They were very complex, and there were also some really interesting friendship relationships. I would have liked maybe if Liz had just like cut her losses with some of these relationships, because I don't think that they were very healthy. But then again, this is in high school. I also really liked the mental health representation. So Liz has anxiety, and I think she has a couple of panic attacks throughout the novel. And I did feel like at the end that kind of tailed off, and it was like Liz just like pushed past her anxiety and succeeded in everything. And I would have liked to see her still I don't want to say still struggling with anxiety, because that sounds really mean. I don't want anyone to be suffering, but just that it wasn't suddenly like gone and that plot line suddenly just didn't exist anymore, if that makes sense. However, as I said earlier, I only gave it 3 stars. My overall enjoyment just wasn't there, and I think that I shouldn't have picked up a young adult contemporary. I think that was my fault, but I always rate books based on like my personal feelings, how I reacted to a book, rather than like what I think other people would rate it. So I think that I probably will not pick up any more young adult contemporaries unless there is one that people are just like really hyping. I will probably pick up Angie Thomas's new book, which is Concrete Rose, because I've read other books by Angie Thomas and I really enjoyed them. Maybe like a John Green, like from authors that I've read before and I know that I enjoy. But I just think like these small problems, you know, like going to prom, it just made me like roll my eyes a bit. I just felt like and I don't really want to spoil the ending, but there's something that someone says to our main character and I was just like, that's just so stupid. And some of the lines in this I just felt were, I don't know, really cheesy and I don't know, a bit like, you're the best person ever, and it's like, she's literally in secondary school. She is not changing the world. I picked up this book, I wanted to give it a go, but I did enjoy it. I gave it 3 stars, and I think if you do love young adult contemporary, this is definitely one that you should give a go. But then it was time for me to read my final book on my TBR, and that was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. Now, I got 1 chapter through this, and I'm DNFing it. So I have never DNF'd a book that quickly, but in the first chapter alone there was ableist jokes, there was fat phobia, and you know what, I'm not here for that. I don't want that in my books. And I did do a little bit of digging, so I went on Goodreads, had a look at some reviews, some like low-starred reviews, and I just don't feel like this is the kind of book that I'm gonna enjoy, considering the other romances that I read this week. I think if I pushed through, it would probably be like a 2-star or a 1-star. So I'm not wasting my time. If you do love The Hating Game, let me know, because it is something that I might go back to in the past, but just like the ableist jokes. So I've given up on that. And that means that it is time to wrap up this romance reading vlog. So what have we learned? So these were the books that I read, except for The Hating Game. I got 1 chapter into that, and then I also read You Should See Me in a Crown. And I did have 2 4-star reads, 2 books that I absolutely loved. So we had The Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics and Get a Life, Chloe Brown. So I think that I definitely need to try some more historical romance, because I adored this, and I know that Olivia Waite has written a couple more books in this series so far. I think actually the 3rd one is coming out later this year. That's definitely something that I want to pick up, so I will be picking up the sequel. I think you can probably read these books separately, like you don't have to read them in chronological order, but the next one is something to do with like waspish widows, and it does follow a character who was briefly featured in this one, so I'm very excited to try that. And yeah, I really liked this one. And then I also really enjoyed Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and I think it's just because the characters were so supportive of each other, and it also looked at stuff like chronic illness. I feel like you don't get much representation of that, and I think that was very nice. I also felt like the hate to love relationship at the beginning of this book was very believable, and it's just like you've made these assumptions of this other person without ever getting to know them, and once you do get to know them, actually you're like, they're not that bad. And I think the tension in this was really good. There was also some really great sex scenes, very explicit sex scenes. There was some sex scenes in this one as well, but I don't think the language was as coarse. I don't know if that's the right word, but this one is very much all the language. So I did actually have a really good time reading this one as well. And then I read The Kiss Quotient, gave it 2 stars. I had some major issues with this, didn't like the love interest, and some of the self-hatred just hit a bit too close to home, and it ruined my reading experience which is not great for a romance, like you're not wanting to confront all of your internal feelings about yourself. That wasn't what I was looking for. Then You Should See Me in a Crown was fine. I think I'm just not a huge fan of young adult anymore. I knew that, but I wanted to just like break up the adult, try something a bit different. And then of course I read a chapter of The Hating Game and decided to give it up. I might have liked The Hating Game, but I just feel like if you're gonna have those jokes in chapter 1, what is the content of the rest of the book going to be? So, what are the conclusions that can be drawn? I think I need to read more historical romance. I like romances where consent is major and the people feel realistic. Also that when there are darker topics being talked about, such as chronic illness, that I don't know, because actually maybe the only reason I picked up on it in the Kiss Quotient is because I actually have autism. So maybe the chronic illness representation could also make you feel a bit negative in this one. I'm not sure. Let me know if you do have chronic illness and you have read this one, what you thought about the representation. And I don't know, maybe not listen to the hype. These ones were incredibly hyped. I didn't like the Kiss Quotient, and I'm not even giving The Hating Game a go, which is probably not great on my part. But then Get a Life, Chloe Brown was popular too. So I don't know. Maybe I need to read some more romances to see what I actually love. And I think that is it. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. What are your favourite romances? I think I also need to try some more fantasy romance because I love fantasy, so I feel like I could really get into fantasy romance. Maybe I should do a video trying fantasy romance. We'll see. But yes, that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching, and to everyone out there, stay curious. Bye!